Yeah.
So I'm the spark for the small guy. Who's going to be the spark? Who's going to be the Medici family? Right? It's like somebody has to be that.
Thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
No doubt, man. What are we talking about today?
I have a couple questions for you. I figured we'd just get right into it if that's cool with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I wanted to say that I find you absolutely hilarious on Twitter and and every single thing that you do, and I also find you like pretty motivating too. You know what I mean? And I really can't thank you enough for doing this. I mean, to give people a little backstory, I hit Hotep up on Twitter. He responded with his email. I set it up, and it's it's been pretty cool so far. Can you explain to me and like the people who are listening what the Hotep movement is and like what all that is about and everything like that?
No, absolutely not. I refuse to. That's one question I don't answer. The other question is I don't answer questions about Starbucks anymore. What I do is I direct people to hotepnation.com. hotepnation.com. Hit the FAQ. If you're truly interested in knowing what Hotep Nation is, you'll go to the FAQ page. Just navigate from the burger menu if you're on mobile. If you're on desktop, you'll be able to hit the FAQ right at the top of the page and get all your questions answered there. But I'd rather talk about more pressing issues.
Yeah, of course, man. I kind of wanted to take this interview from the approach of like, you yourself rather than maybe what you're about, because from all the things I've listened to with you on, it seems like you're an extremely motivated person. And I just kind of want to know how you got to that place in your life where you can like, defeat your own mind and you can avoid these distractions that like, so many people I feel like, succumb to.
Mindset. Yep. Mindset. Have kids. Have kids, and it's like, it kicks you into overdrive. I had a daughter really young. I had a daughter when I was 21. And I had a rough patch, throughout many years in my life. But I don't know. In high school, I was like, I organized like a fight club, and I always wanted to organize a group of men and a group of guys and push them towards some common goal. When I was young, I just didn't really know what that mission was or anything like that. But I always wanted to organize and get guys going towards something, some common goal. So, in high school, after school, the guys would come over. I went to Sears, bought a pair of boxing gloves, and we'd fight every day. We'd match everybody up by weight class, and we just fight Monday through Friday. That's what we did. And it was inspired by the movie Fight Club.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is really cool. We should do this. Except I don't want people going to school with bloody bare knuckles and, busted up faces. So let's get some gloves and let's do this safe. My mom would come home late. So we'd be boxing in the garage till like 8 p.m. And I kick everybody out before my mom came home, busting up the garage door and whatnot. But it's something that, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you, what that was. I just know I had it at a very young age. I just had a passion to be more than mediocre, a passion to be more than average. I just always wanted to be the best at whatever I did, and of course, I hit rough patches in my life, and I had to pull myself back up and get back on the horse. But I don't know, man. I couldn't tell you. It's just in me. It's in my blood.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, man. I'm involved in like tons of things. I mean, I produce a bunch of podcasts for people. I have my own podcast. I started a little bit of a video business a couple years back. But I mean, same thing happened with me. I hit a rough patch from like 18 to 26, and it was it was hard to pull myself out of. But once I started to do, and I started to grow, and I started to like actually see some change, my life started to turn around, for the better. But you
know what I can't do? I can't sit around and do nothing. It like
me too, man.
It irritates my soul. Like I remember there would be times where a day would go by and I'd accomplish nothing, And then at the end of the day, you're doing like this review of your day and you're just like, wow, I wasted a whole day of my life and did nothing. I played video games all day. And I just remember those moments of feeling like crap when I did that. I literally would be unhappy if I wasn't doing something.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't read something, if I didn't learn something, if I didn't create something new, I'm unhappy at the end of the day. I feel most fulfilled when I've done something, created something, learned something. It's just how I'm built.
Yeah, I get that, man. I mean, even, before we did this podcast, I had like my whole morning kind of blocked off to just, get ready, get the equipment set up. And, I had some downtime and I'm just like shaking. Like I gotta get something done. Like what else can I read? What else can I do before we get this thing going? So how do you, like, I've heard you talk on different podcasts about how you raise your kids and everything like that. Is this something that you try to instill in them? Because like, I feel for me, I grew up in a white suburban middle class household. I didn't have really any issues whatsoever. You know what I mean? And I feel like part of the reason I kind of, drifted off in my, early 20s was because I never had to overcome any sort of like obstacle or anything like that. I was bored and I didn't have any direction and I didn't have any issues. So when, I turned 18 and 19 and I started, fooling around, like I wasn't prepared for it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With the kids, it's just a matter of routine and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
They're in sports. They're in chess club. So it's just a reminder. And it's, I try to have frequent lectures. My days are busy, but, if I can get a good lecture in every few days or once a week, I try at the minimum once a week. Good lecture, watch some video, some good red pill and video or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday, we watched America's Frontline Doctors with Dr. Simone Gold on the truth about the stupid 19 and the shot, the needle. So and then out of that, we have to talk about antibodies and antigens and pathogens. And then a lot of questions come up. So yesterday, my 17-year-old daughter asked me, it's like, why do these people want us dead? Why do they want to kill us? And I said, it's not really that. It's really control. And then she's like, well, how can they get away with this if the information is so freely available? So we got into the whole censorship conversation. I said, well, they got 20 million hits, and within hours, the video was taken down across YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, etc. So we're talking about censorship. But she's like, if the information's still out there, like we're sitting here watching it, how is it that they're able to get away with this? And then it brings us to the conclusion that, I just tell the kids, people are dumb, right? And when I say that, I was trying to be funny because you got to keep the conversation light and funny for kids to stay engaged.
Yeah, of course.
But my point is that people just aren't educated. So when we start talking about, the immune system, innate immune system, the interferon system, the adaptive system, the gut-brain axes, pathogens, antibodies, RNA, DNA, mRNA, the nucleus, cytoplasm, all these different terms and technologies of God, people can't digest the information. So even when you're watching the Simone Gold, you still have to be of a certain IQ to understand what she's saying. Mm-hmm. Right. So even for the kids, I have to, break down some of the terminology for them. Like, what she said right there? Do you know what she said right here? Okay, cool. You get it. Or you don't get it. So let me explain that. But the average person is, probably dumber than a fifth grader, right?
Do you think it's so much that people are I feel like it's a combination of people are dumb and then just straight up lazy, like and they just want.
Well, they're dumb because they're lazy,
right? Yeah, okay. That,
right? They're lazy is the reason why they're dumb. Is the reason why they're uninformed is because they're lazy, right? Product of being in a so-called first world country, life it just comes too easy. But, people just aren't informed. Our culture doesn't reinforce education. It doesn't say being educated is cool. So therefore, culture doesn't respect being informed. So when somebody comes along and tells you, you need to take this needle or, you need to social distance and mask up, and you have no idea how the immune system works, and you don't have any idea about human health, immune health, or anything like that, you'll just be a sheep and follow along. Mm-hmm. But so people ask me, like, how do we combat this machine? It's like, pick up a fucking book.
You read some articles or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, educate yourself. There's 3 main components that people need to educate themselves on consistently. And it's health, law, and finance. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 things if you can master those 3 things, and it's part of the 10 Hotep commandments, if you can master those 3 things, system can't beat you. Because you know how your body works, so they can't feed you lies about health. Your money's right, so they can't feed you lies about the fiat currencies and all these other different things. And then when they try to lie to you, you can take them to court because you understand law, you understand case law. So those are the 3 things that people have to master. But instead, people are mastering, arguing on social media.
Yeah, I was out with a buddy of mine getting some food at a restaurant, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. And he was saying, they had the plastic dividers up in between all the tables. And I was asking him to come out with me because we live in the Atlantic City area. And I was asking him if he wanted to come out and catch a comedy show. And he was like, I don't really want to be, around all those people and like that close. Meanwhile, we're sitting in a restaurant with a piece of plastic that doesn't even go above our head. And I'm like, yo, like, look around where we're at. I said, there's people everywhere. No one's got a mask on. Like, this thing is, an airborne, so-called airborne illness. Like, do you think any of this is doing anything? Like, it just seems like it's all for show, you know?
Yeah, it's that type of work is save my job work, right? Basically what it is if somebody contracts an illness, they're going to say, okay, what precautions did you take to prevent the transmission of disease? Mm-hmm. And they're going to say, hey, we put social distance in place. We put masks in place. Yeah. We put these little plastic barriers up. So at the end of the day, the person can say, I tried my best, save my job, right? Although none of that stuff is actually going to work. Hey, I saved my job, right? Cool. Now, if they don't do that, the person say, hey, 72% of people who came in your restaurant contracted the disease. What happened? What'd you do to prevent this? Nothing. Okay, you're fired, right? So these are save my job precautions. They're not measures to actually do anything.
Yeah, it's just, it's purely for show, really. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, I had a tough time right when COVID first started because, the business I had is a video production, mainly advertising business, and I didn't really have any sort of backup. I was in the first year of my business, and all my clients had to do with, casinos, restaurants, entertainment industry. So when they decided to lock down New Jersey, all my work just dried up essentially overnight. I had no backup plan. I mean, fortunately, I'm skilled enough where I can find a job in, other fields, but the only thing that I got offered from the government was a loan, And when I see stuff like that, it just, the little faith that I had left in any sort of institution just completely is gone. It's like
you see, when you're born Hotep, you're skeptical of all this shit anyway. Even many educated Black folk, you're usually skeptical of government. So when we get information, we're usually like, that's probably some bullshit. That's the plus side of being Black in America.
Yeah, I remember I've always kind of had this skeptical philosophy. I remember, I went to CCD, which is Catholic education for little kids. Mm-hmm. And there was some prayer. I don't even remember what prayer it was, but the end of the prayer goes, "World without end, amen." And mind you, I'm in 7th grade. Or no, I'm 7 years old. I'm not in 7th grade. I'm 6, 7. And I said to the teacher, who's just some volunteer church lady, I'm like, well, the sun's going to explode at some point and the world is going to end. So I don't really understand what this means. And the lady just looked at me like I had 6 heads. So I've always kind of had this, I guess, skepticism about, and that's kind of when I found you and have started to learn a little bit about, the kind of content you're producing.
Indeed. Yeah. I did CCD too. I was raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I only got confirmed because my dad had some choice words for the establishment. He started exposing some of the hidden truths of the Bible. So by the time my dad got done with the pastor's like, all right, we're just going to confirm this guy.
Just gave you a little
So
bit of a blessing.
I got pushed through because my dad got at the pastor's neck.
Yeah, I mean,
pastor couldn't answer those questions either.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't ever remember reading anything like that. I don't know the Bible at all. I don't remember reading anything like that. So what the stuff that you're doing now, I see that you're doing, writing books, the Rules of Masculinity. Did that just come out, or I saw it on Twitter recently? Could you talk to me about that?
No, this was published December 13th, 2019. According to the print version, the digital version was probably printed sometime before then. Great document here. The Unbreakable Rules of Masculinity. Yeah. So let's talk about my motivation. Well, first of all, I got 2 sons, and I always wanted to leave behind some material that they could study. Their sons can study as a guide throughout life. Right? Some form of discipline to understand. The book started out with the title "Women Decoded" because I was explaining women's tendencies to men. In fact, the first chapter opens up explaining a woman's cycle and things of that nature. You understand, one is appropriate to be in close proximity with a woman, and when she's probably acting funny because of that time of the month, right? Because they have hormonal changes, and those hormonal changes cause emotional changes. But the book is very much teaching men how to be men, right? Like real men, not this whole like macho thing about It's more about like I have a chapter in there called Equilibrium. So some people would describe my book as stoic, very following along the line of stoicism, which I completely believe in. When I think about feminism, I think feminism is grown due to a lack of masculinity, a lack of men being men. When you look at the majority of these feminists, they're usually fatherless or have some event that happened to them in their life where a man did them wrong, and now they're just angry at men. I know like one prominent black feminist, her baby daddy, I guess you could say, left her mid-pregnancy and got married to another woman. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to understand why she hates men after somebody does that to you, right? Yeah. But if you understood this woman, you could probably understand why he left her.
I don't know who it is, but yeah.
Jamila Lemieux.
Okay.
Really nasty woman towards men. But yeah, I wanted something for young men to have. Some people say, they'll misjudge my book and say, hey, this is a pickup artist book. And it's like, no, this has nothing to do with picking up women. This has everything to do with having a healthy relationship with women. What I realized in my later years of life is that the only thing a man really wants from a woman is peace. So this book was designed to show men how to find peace with women so that they don't knock you off your horse, so they don't disturb your life and disturb you from reaching your goals, because every man's downfall is usually due to a woman or money. So, my first 2 books are about money and women. Mm-hmm. Very important for young men. Also, I had all these rules swirling around in my head. So usually when I have stuff swirling around in my head, I'm like, I have to get it out and put it on paper. So that was another motivation. Currently, the book is at a psychology professor has included the Unbreakable Rules of Masculinity.
Yes, I saw that. Yep.
You said what?
I saw that on your Twitter.
Psychology professor at Texas A&M University has included it in their curriculum. I have no formal. I shouldn't say I have no formal. I took a couple of psychology courses. I don't remember what I learned from them. They're probably teaching me Freud when I'm really more like a young guy. I've had a lot of So you can learn psychology through the book, or you can learn psychology through life, right? I've learned psychology through life. I've done a lot of experimenting on people, especially at a young age. When I was in high school, I was working on this thing called 5 archetypes. And I said that the human beings are really broken down into probably 5 archetypes. And then I started matching these archetypes with phenotype. So I said, if you look like this is probably your archetype. As I've grown older, I've noticed that there's some flaw to that theory, but I think it's more like 60 to 70% accuracy as opposed to 100% accuracy, because environment has a lot to do with, how somebody is evolving. But I noticed that, there was basically like a range from irritable to amiable. So I would poke at people to find out where their threshold for tolerance was. And I found that irritable people had a lower threshold for antagonism, and amiable people had a higher threshold for antagonism. The difference was when you push an amiable person past the edge, they usually last out way worse than the irritable person. The irritable person is like, you pissed them off. It's like, I can kind of handle this. An amiable person pissed you off. It's like, holy shit, I wish I would have never done that before, right? Because they're like holding back, and then they burst like a volcano. So, when I was a kid, I used to just annoy people just to see how they would react, and I'm the only kid. I was just like, coming to school, having fun. So school to me was like my lab.
Right.
And then this whole social media thing was born. So then I took it to the next level and started really studying people, like with my tweets and, and trying to see how people respond to certain things. So there's things I learned about psychology, just through life and just by observing people. Now, I said on the Fresh and Fit podcast, I joke around and I say, they say, hey, how are you, the way you are, the success or whatever, the prominence, the power or whatever. And I say, I'm a reincarnated ascended master because I have this high level of consciousness. And when I say I have this high level of consciousness, it's because I'm always paying attention to myself and others. For example, I always give this example, you're at a party and people are hanging out and everybody's talking, right? Let's say it's a group of 5. Well, when one person's talking, the next person isn't technically listening. They're just waiting for their turn to speak, right? So I, being the observer, the watcher, would notice this. So I wouldn't participate in that type of behavior, which ended up making me the focal point of the group because I'm the only one listening. So what I noticed was when it was the next person's chance to speak, they would speak to me. Everybody would look at me when they spoke. Mm-hmm. I was the only one asking questions. And what I realized was people just aren't conscious of themselves. They don't realize what they're doing. And that's really the big problem in humanity is a lack of consciousness, which if you had would lead you towards higher intelligence. So, through observing people, through experimenting, you come to understand people and understand how to operate with people, which allows me to write these books from a very psychological perspective. I had this one doctor, he's a psychologist, and he's been a psychologist for, probably more than 2 decades, I believe he said. And he read my book, Dominate Twitter. And he said, I bought all these different courses on Twitter. And I bought your 150-page document, 113-page document on Twitter, plus the addendums, updates. And he said, this blew away all the other courses I ever bought. What I didn't tell him was that the people who made those courses that he took bought my book first. But they still didn't get it, right? Yeah. Because people read it once and think they got it. But the way I write, you have to read it 5 times because it's very potent, line by line. It's very filled and potent, right? So he said to me, I wish I had this book at 20. That's what he said to me. This is a psychologist, doctor. Keep in mind, I have no formal education. My education was all through life and experimenting. But he said, yeah, this is one of the greatest documents he's ever read. And he said, I wish I had this at 20. It's coming from a psychologist. So my Unbreakable Rules of Masculinity book is in a psychology course at a university. I've never attended a university. The Dominate Twitter book was proposed to be introduced at Yale. and they wanted me to come speak. That fell through, I think, because of, politics.
Right.
And then this doctor hit me up of psychology, and he says, yo, this is a great book. The word he described it was meta. He said it's very meta because I don't work on the conscious mind. A lot of people use advertising and marketing to work on the conscious mind. I use advertising and branding and marketing, mostly branding, to target the subconscious mind. So when you fall asleep at night, I remember some of my fathers used to say, yo, I fell asleep and I dreamt about you last night, male and female, nothing like crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so what I'm doing is working. But, I operate on the subconscious mind, and I study the subconscious mind more than the conscious mind.
Yeah, man. One thing in the interviews that I've heard with you, and the reason I wanted to talk to you is because to me, it seems like you have this like high level of self-awareness. And that's something that, I don't know if it's something you can practice or something you can learn. And I find myself to be a little bit more self-aware, at least than the people I surround myself with. And it's just a really peculiar thing. When I listen to you speak on, different podcasts, it's just like, my mind is constantly running because I'm like trying to get inside your mind to understand, the way that you're thinking. And
the way to higher mind is no mind.
What do you mean by that?
Clear your mind, like they say, like the monks, and they say, clear your mind, right? So the way to higher mind is no mind, because the inspirational thoughts come from God or above, or the cosmic consciousness, or, infinite intelligence, whatever, term people want to use these days. It's imbued from beyond. Your conscious mind is imbued from beyond with inspiration. For example, you might need an idea. The idea doesn't come to you right away. And you're, walking around, maybe sweeping the kitchen, going for a jog. Like jogs are really good because jogs clear the mind. And then you go for a jog and like all these pieces of information start flowing into your mind. You're like, right, why is this? Yeah. Because the jog is actually opening your mind. So how is God supposed to imbue your mind with inspiration when it's busy and it's clogged and it's full, right? You have to open that jar to allow the thoughts to come in. So, the power of my conscious mind is my ability to reach no mind.
Yeah.
Hold no thought.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I used to practice a lot with doing like meditation and working out. And over the past year, I think I've just been so focused on like, the bottom line and trying to like, make ends meet and like, and working and organizing and trying to get all these video projects I have like done on time and, going to this job, going to that job, that like I've kind of lost, I don't know if I've lost the ability, but I've definitely lost the practice of doing something like that, and I don't know, I bet there's a lot of people throughout this pandemic that's, kind of happened to is, you get caught up in the shuffle and the politics and the news and all that other bullshit. And, you just like, I lost touch with it, over the course of, I guess the past 6, 7, 8 months, something like that.
Yeah. I don't meditate.
Yeah. So what do you do, to kind of, to clear that mind, like on a either daily basis or whatever?
I just clear it.
Yeah. Just click and it's gone. It's clear.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's practice.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of practice. Years of practice. It's not something that you can just achieve overnight unless you just happen to be special. But when I say I don't meditate, I'm saying that as a fault of mine. I'm not saying that as that's something good. Okay. I used to be somebody who was like heavy into meditation, and these days it's just like I don't got time. Right? It's just like I'm just running and living life, and it's like I'll come back to that when I have a chance. My meditations happen in different ways, right? So people assume meditation is sitting down, lotus style, hands, and then om. Now that stuff is great, right? Don't get me wrong, but everybody's able to find zen and peace when there's peace in their environment, right? Sun's just right, the birds is chirping, the temperature's just right. Everybody can do it then. Can you do it when your world is erratic? How do you find peace then? How do you find zen then when somebody's yelling at you or attacking you, right? or when somebody does something that annoys you, how do you find Zen then? That's my practice. That's my meditation. It's those times when I feel my temperature rise that I have to recognize the emotion and then breathe and then let go. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's my practice of meditation. Right. So I look at people and they say, oh yeah, I meditate. I'm like, yeah, but how do you do when your life is shit? Right. Because I don't meditate, but when my life turns into shit, I can alleviate myself like that. Right. But again, that's practice. So then when you talk about no mind, the fastest way to know mind is through the five senses. So you can't technically think and taste food at the same exact time. You got to do one or the other. And your brain may alternate between the two, but it can't hold multiple thoughts at the same time and only think one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. So it can alternate between a thought and taste, but it can't do both at the same exact time. So if you want to clear your mind, what I say to people is grab a teaspoon of honey and put that in your mouth and tell me what you're thinking about then. I bet you're only thinking about the taste of that honey, right? But again, taste, smell, hearing, all these things. So if I want to enter a state of no mind, I usually go auditory and listen to the silence, or I listen to the noise between the silence,
right?
Or I listen to the silence between the noise, right? And then that creates like this level of focus that takes you out of your mind. But now it's like, I don't even do that. I could just like,
it's become sort of automatic.
Yeah, it's just like, I can just do it now. Because it's just practice, you know. When you get obsessed with something, like I had this obsession, like people would say, hey, you know, how do you not think? And I had an obsession with it. So I just, you know, from practicing over the years, I was just became easier and easier.
Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, look at that, you know, practice in any sort of facet of my life. Like I got into video production, you know, kind of like as a kid, and then, you know, more recently in the past like 2 or 3 years, and the stuff that I've been able to learn in that amount of time is like way more than anything I would have learned in school. You know, like I went back to school maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I was taking some like communications classes, and you know, I was watching YouTube videos, like tons and tons of YouTube videos about, you know, cameras, camera lenses, like, you know, focal length, what you use for this, what you use for that, editing software, everything like that. And I was sitting in the back of this classroom, and this teacher is up there, you know, at the podium. You know, she may have worked on a TV show in the early 90s, and she's telling me something about focal lengths on cameras, and she had it backwards. You know, 24 is like a wide shot, 100 would be like a tight shot. She's saying it backwards. You know, I raise my hand and I'm like, no, it's, you know, this is wide. 20, the lower the number, the wider it is. The tighter the number, the closer it is. And she's like telling me I'm wrong. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, the fuck is this? I'm paying $6,000 to listen to somebody who doesn't even know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah. That's why I dropped out of college. No, I remember first year in college, I had an accountant teacher. She rolled up in a Pinto. I'm like, is this one supposed to take instruction from somebody who hasn't, you know, this is an accounting class. If anybody's supposed to have mastery over money, it should be her. Yeah. But she can't manage her money to drive a car that at least won't break down on her. Like, this thing looks disheveled, right? So then I had I enrolled myself in school again, you know, make mom and dad proud, right? So I enrolled myself in school again. I just remember getting itchy because I'm like, I feel like I'm just losing money sitting here. It's 2:00 in the afternoon and I'm sitting here like, listen to this guy speak. And I'm just like agitated. I'm getting ADD. And it's just like, I just want to go outside. I don't want to be sitting in the classroom. I feel like I'm wasting my time.
That's exactly how I felt.
Like, I feel like I'm really like wasting my time. Like I could be doing something more productive. I feel like I'm losing money. And I remember the breaking point for me was I went to a class one time and I pulled up late. And she was like, oh, you're late. And I looked at him like, hey, bro, I pay for this class. I'll let you know when you're late. And the whole class was like, oh. And then I sat down and he felt stupid because he didn't expect, like, I looked really young. But I think I was like maybe 21 at this point. And, you know, I was At 19, I was making $1,000, $2,000 a week selling women's shoes at Nordstrom. I was killing it, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking to a kid who's walking around with wads of cash in his pocket. So I had big dick energy. You know what I mean? So, I'm walking in this class and I'm looking at this guy like, I could probably buy you, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I paid for this course. My mom and dad didn't pay for this. I paid for this course with my money, right?
And paying his salary.
And I'm paying your salary, right? Like, so you wouldn't be here without my money. So how dare you even speak to me this way? So every day before class, I would show up early, stand outside, let everybody walk in, and I'd walk in 5 minutes late. He'd see me do this, and he wouldn't say anything to me. And I'd walk in 5 minutes late just to wish he'd say something to me. You know what I mean? So I didn't have any, but I remember one time I had a great professor. I wanted to take a marketing course. I had my own record label and we were doing great. And people kept telling me, yo, you're great at marketing. You're great at marketing. And I had no idea what marketing was. So I was like, let me take this marketing course and find out what this thing really is. So I took a course and the guy was a consultant for DuPont. And he was commissioned to sell more detergent, washing clothes stuff, right? So, he said, we look at the demographics and all this stuff, and it's moms, blah, 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 blah. So he said, look, put antibacterial on the cover, on the packaging, right? Marketing is product price placement packaging, right? So he said, put it on the packaging because one of the things during the research said it was antibacterial. So he said, say that, put that on the packaging. So we took the same detergent, maybe remixed it a little bit and threw antibacterial. And next thing you know, DuPont is selling more detergent because of this, label. So I started to understand what marketing was. That was like probably the best, money I've ever spent on a college course. But I got certified. I didn't care. I don't even know where that certification is. It came in the mail. I tossed it in my closet, like, fuck this piece of paper, right? Yeah. And, moved on in my life. I just was there for the knowledge, right? To understand what it was. And it was the one class where we had the end of year project was a group project. And it was the one class where I was the guy, like, motivated, running because usually I was slacking off. Like, I was the guy you had to, it was a group project and I'm the guy falling asleep, right? Mm-hmm. But it was reversed. It was like this time it was like I'm telling people like, yo, we got to get together. We got to meet and da-da-da-da. I was really into this thing. So that was the marketing course I took. Outside of that, I didn't have any formal education. I went on to sell mortgages. So I got a huge education in sales, real life sales, cold calling over the phone. I remember the first 3 months I was living at my homeboy's house and, people usually tell you, go get a job where they're actually paying your salary. Don't get one where they're paying you commission. And 3 months went by. I hadn't gotten a paycheck. So he's like, yo, they're scamming you, blah, 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 blah. Then I finally closed my first deal through the bank called Argent. The lady really talked me down. I think I only got 1% on that loan, very small loan. I think she had like a 4.25% interest rate and I made $400 on the deal. And I was like, but it was my first deal I closed. I came home, my homeboy was like, yo, he made $400. I told you it was a scam, da, 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 da. Well, the next month I came home with a $5,000 check. And I came home all cash and I threw it at him. Like, what now, motherfucker? What now, motherfucker? And then, I started, making some serious paper. So he didn't call the scam anymore. He was like, yo, you cooked me up with a job?
Let me get a loan.
So he ended up coming and he tried to work there, but he didn't have enough ambition for the job because it's a lot of work. You
cold calling too, man. That phone scares the shit out of a lot of people, myself included, really.
Yeah, you got to do 100 calls and people telling you no. It's real easy to get discouraged really fast, right? So you got to throw those no's over your shoulder and keep banging out till you got that one yes. I remember one time I switched companies and this kid Mo was on the phone and I'm just listening to the kid, right? He was new. He was probably in his first month and he was on the phone with the lady and I forget what the conversation was like, but he hung up with her. I was like, Mo, yo, you got off the phone with that lady? He's like, yeah, she's not going to close. I'm like, yes, she is. That was a closer right there. He's like, no, it's not. I said, give me the phone number. Give me the phone number. Give me the information. Give me the application. Like I saw money. Mm-hmm. Man, I called that lady up, closed that loan. He looked at me like, But, you know, when you're in the business for so long, you can kind of hear when somebody can be closed and cannot be closed.
Yeah.
You just pick up on it. And I heard it just through how he was conducting that conversation. I remember I was at that same company and I brought a loan over from my other company, and that loan was worth $17,000 to my pocket. And I'll never forget this. James Marchese, he's a conservative on Twitter right now. He robbed me. I was a young kid. I didn't know any better. But he pulled me into the office. He said, "Hey, I just had to talk to Mr. Fernandez on the phone, and you know this loan didn't close, so I'm going to have to chop your commission from 50% to 20% or something like that." And you know, he's an attorney, so he's just like talking like over my head.
Right? Yeah, things he didn't understand.
You know, me being a young kid, so I think I walked away with maybe a $5,000 check instead of a $17,000 check, and the next month we moved, and I realized wait, you moved the office off of my loan, my huge loan, right? And I only got scraps. And then I ended up getting sick. And then when I got sick, I was just so sick of being robbed too that I didn't even want to show up in the office. So then when I went back, I was never even motivated to make him any more money. So I was a mediocre salesman. And then he had this guy named Mike Bottles that worked there. And he was a douche. What happened was at my old company, I would pre-qual people for loans.
Okay.
But I could pre-qual off the top of my head, right? The rate sheet would print out in the morning and I had a photographic memory and I'd look at it and I can see a range in my head, right? So I would pre-qual loans at the old company. Well, this new company, after you took an application, you had to hand it to this guy. He had to pre-qual it. And then it went to the next guy and the next guy and next guy, where I was used to doing the whole process myself.
Okay.
Everything through talking to the underwriter. So I'd hand him an application. I'd be like, "Yeah, I need that pre-qual." And he'd be like, "Oh, I'll get to it." And I'm just like, I got to wait for this guy to get to. You're sitting here playing solitaire, bro. Big fat dude. Sitting there playing solitaire. So one day I just came and I was just like, "Yo, I just pre-qualled the loan myself." So then he comes out of the office "Yo, you can't pre-qual that." I said, "It's been on your desk for 3 days, bro. It's been on your desk for 3 days." So he's like, "How do you even know the rate you got is right?" I was like, "Pre-qual it and tell me I'm wrong." Mm-hmm. He pre-quals it and it's exactly what I said. I said, "Bro, I know how to pre-qual." So, James Marchese, being the asshole that he is, was like, "Yo, you gotta follow protocol, and this is how we do things here." And I'm like, "Yo, I can't slow up my money because your guy doesn't want to do my loans, right?" So it was a lot of bureaucracy and bullshit. So then I left there and I became branch manager at somebody else's bank where I had full control, and I really loved that. The problem was that was 3 months before the financial crisis.
Okay.
So the whole industry came crashing down. As soon as I hit the peak of my career as branch manager, I was running the show, I was calling the shots, and then the mortgage industry crashed. And then that was my life reset, and I was back at zero. And that showed a really rough time.
Yeah, man. I mean, I can relate to a lot of that. When I got done, when I quit going to school again with that teacher, I was I was trying to get video production jobs. I was trying to do TV stations, film, and this is all pre-COVID. This is probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm just I'm getting absolutely nothing. I took some sales job at a radio station that sucked. No one was buying real radio ads. I mean, nobody really buys them now anyway. And I'm just I was kind of just floundering. I'm I got, I know what I really want to do, and I want to be in film, and I want to be in production of some kind, but I was getting nothing, no responses. I'm sending out applications and applications. This is something I still do today too. I mean, each week I probably apply to 10 to 15, 20 different jobs just to see if anything hits, if I get any calls, I can interview practice. And I'm sitting there one day and I'm you know what? We got good credit. I didn't have any capital whatsoever. So I bought $7,000 worth of video equipment, all on, no interest, credit card. I was all right. So, I got 12 and 16 months to pay back these 2 credit cards. How much money do I need to make in that time period for me to be able to make this work? And, the number came out to I don't know, it was $430 a month. Then I'm all right, well, shit, I can sell a $500 video a month. Easy,
Mm.
easy. I can make $500 a month in these little side hustle, 30-second, 1 minute social media commercials for people. So I'm like, all right, bet. So, and before actually, I was working with another guy. Had a partner, which was the worst idea I ever had in my life. Learned a lot from it, but it was a bad idea nonetheless. But then I started to get a little bit of confidence, and I'm like, all right, well, if I get a little bit more equipment, instead of charging people $500, I can charge them $1,000. And if I can learn how to do this, now I can charge people $1,500 or $2,000. And to me, there's nothing better than going into business for yourself and not really relying on anybody else. And of course, I have to rely on the economy, the area that I'm in, and the businesses that are there, because that's what my business is based on. But being able to wake up every day and just having to know that there's not going to be anybody like this Mike Bottles guy or anybody in my life who's going to limit my potential for success is a great feeling. You know what I mean? It's just I'm sure you can probably relate to that a lot too. That's, to me, that's the best feeling there is.
Yeah, that's why I loved entrepreneurship, because if something went wrong, I was on me. Nobody could hold me back. I remember I had this one kid, I forget his name, at that same company. And he used to just heckle me from the back of the room, right? I'd be on the phone talking and he'd just say something really negative, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, yo, relax, bro. It's why I like the other company, because we had our own cubicles. You could just zone out and do your own thing. But this place, the way James set it up was he set it up like a classroom. And I was like, yo, why are you treating us like kids, bro? So this kid used to heckle me. When it come, fast forward a few years later, the kid committed suicide. I'm like, I knew he was unhappy for some reason. Damn. So, moral story is you got to, watch people who are unhappy. Usually they're unhappy with you because they're unhappy with themselves. So, avoid unhappy people altogether. That's a big part of your life. If I had to do it in hindsight, I would have snitched on a lot of people in my life, because the moment I did something that they didn't like, they snitched on me. Right. But I would, you black, you just raised yo, we don't snitch. Right. We don't snitch. Right. But and you just you felt like a punk if you snitched. This is something, I felt I'm not going to snitch, whatever. I'll just figure out how to deal with this stuff. But in hindsight, oh my God, if I had, if I went back to corporate America today, I'd be a snitching ass motherfucker. You do me crazy? Oh, I'm snitching. Yo, I don't like the way this person's over here is talking to me. They're making me feel uncomfortable. Yo, Black Lives Matter. Do something about this. And that's how I would be, because that's how people treated me, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I was having a conversation with my fiance last night, and we were talking about, situations that we've been in recently, and we go against that gut feeling, because I'll do this thing where I ask too many people about a situation that I'm going through, and I get all these different answers. You know what I mean? And people I look up to. I'm not just asking some random friends or anything like that, but people whose judgment I trust. And I'll hear a bunch of different answers, and then it moves me away from the decision that I instinctively thought I should have done. Yeah. And then it goes sour for some reason, maybe it doesn't or whatever, but it goes bad. And then I'm thinking months later, I'm like, fuck, if I just would have listened to myself, I would have gotten to where I was going. And that's something I've struggled with. I think, my whole life is this, need to appease, either family or friends with the actions that I do, and not trust myself. To me, that's a, and I come from a large, Italian and Irish family, and kind of being accepted in the family is an important, I guess, value structure of mine. And in certain respects, I think that's really kind of hampered the growth, and growth potential. So I'm trying to do something to move away from that a little bit.
In order to understand when to listen to yourself, you have to make those type of mistakes, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I was like that, where I knew I should do something, but I listened to other people, and I was just man, I knew what I should have done in that situation, right? I knew what was real and what was not, which led me to the point where I am now, where I know when I need somebody else's advice, and I know when I'm going to listen to myself and ignore people's unsolicited, unqualified advice, right? So a lot of that takes mistakes and mess ups to see, okay, I can trust myself, right? And to make these decisions. But that's just a part of growing, and I don't regret anything, but because of the fact that I'm so great at decision making for myself now, I just know, all right, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm listening to me on this, right? And there's a lot of times, just building Hotep Nation, right? So, like one of the main things was like, people are like, oh, you're so controversial. And, I would second guess myself sometimes, but then I remembered, no, listen to yourself. These people don't know what's best for you. They're mad because you're not like them. Well, you fast forward, it's like being controversial has been my strength, right? The other thing I found out was, what I realized was, I wasn't even trying to be controversial at a point. At a point, I was just speaking my mind. And what I realized was my thoughts were so different that it came off as trolling and controversial. And I'm just like, yo, like, I remember going viral sometimes. Like, I didn't even intend to go viral. I just had this thought.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to share this with people. I think this is a really cool thought. And people are like, oh my God, how could you say that? And I'm like, wait, this is common sense to me. Yeah. This isn't common sense to you people. Like, you hate this thought. This is how Hotep Nation was born. Like when Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin, all that stuff happened. And I told the Black community, I said, hey, it'd be better if, we controlled our economics and controlled our capital. And I got canceled for that. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? I thought we were on the same page as this, but that's when the whole victim victor thing, right, came around, and I was like, nah, I'd rather be a victor than the victim, So, you always got to listen to yourself, man. Listen to yourself and know when to listen to other people, because that's key too.
Mm-hmm. You were just saying something that reminded me of other podcasts I've heard you on. About the Atlantic slave trade is something I wanted to ask you about, because I've heard you discuss it on Rogan's podcast, and I think somewhere else too, and I'm really interested in that theory. I recently read Graham Hancock's book. It's called America Before, and in that book he talks about the initial peopling of the of the Western Hemisphere, and in that book, he talks about how there's DNA evidence that like native South American people have more closely related genes to people from like the Australia, New Zealand region, and none whatsoever with like Russia in the north, which completely would shatter the Bering Strait. Walk across and then go down, and then other scholars I've seen say, well, They walked across, they came up from Australia, walked all the way up through Asia, across North America, and then all the way down to South America, and then somehow didn't interrelate with anybody along that journey. It's like, so when I heard your thing about the Atlantic slave trade, it made me think. And what bothers me a lot is people just like, if they don't agree with it, they'll just say it's bullshit, without even taking any time to like kind of think through that. You know what I mean?
Cognitive dissonance kicks in. The funny thing is a lot of those people are so-called conservatives, right? I call them red whites. So the red whites, what they'll do is they'll complain and they'll say, this liberal education, this education system, this liberal education, they lie to us in school. They say all this. And then I'll challenge that narrative of the Atlantic slave trade and blacks being here on this land before. And they'll go, that's blasphemy. And I'm like, wait, so you're telling me that you believe what you learned in school now? Like, you got to pick one. Either what you learned in school was hypocrisy and straight lies, or you decide to be a bigot. Which one is it, bro? But again, it's cognitive dissonance, and, people want to believe that black people never did nothing. But, how can you blame them when nobody's ever educated them on the history of Africans in Africa? I ask the people, I say, name an African kingdom. Exactly. So shut the fuck up, right? Like you have nothing to contribute to this conversation. You have no concept of history outside of what you were told in school with European and U.S. history. You don't even have a concept of Asian history. A concept of ancient history. You have no conception of anything outside of Rome and Greece. You don't know anything. So, whereas my self-education was reversed. I was studying ancient history. I was studying African history, and then I came back to relearning, Western civilization and their, ridiculous history, including things like the Great Stink. And it's like, how can you expect anything great from a people who went through something called the Great Stink? It's just terrible, Like, you want to talk about black people being savages, and you had something called the Great Stink, and you wonder why we had smallpox, cowpox, and chickenpox. Because you motherfuckers is just nasty. You know what I'm saying? But, when I said that on Rogan, a lot of people, had a lot of pushback. But the part that killed me was Jamie fact checked me live and was like, yo, there's a lot of validity to what he's saying. And I'm like, you didn't just hear Jamie fact check me? Because he fact checked me.
Yeah, that was with
you saying Jamie's wrong too?
That was with like the number of people that came to North America, I think, right? Isn't that what he fact checked you on?
Yeah,
the number of people
he said only
over?
5% actually came.
Yeah.
On those boats. But I mean, like I said, as a kid, it just didn't make sense to me. Because I'm looking at the history books and I'm seeing brown people as natives. So in my head, I'm like, all right, so these is black people. There's only people I know that's brown, right? So then they tell us they brought us in from Africa. And I'm just like, why would you bring people from a whole other continent when there's people here already? And then you get into, like Christopher Columbus, I always tell people, read a letter to Decent Angel. And you read the letter to Decent Angel, he's like, yeah, I landed on the island and the first thing I did was take slaves. So what he's basically saying is he's landed in Haiti or Haiti. He met black people there and then he took them as slaves. Then he took them and brought them back to Europe. So I'm like, how come people, when they talk about the transatlantic slave trade, don't talk about people coming from west to east? They always talk about from going east to west. They don't talk about the reverse, right? But that's what he did. He came back, and I think it was Queen Isabella. He's like, hey, I brought slaves back for you. She's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with these people? Right? Like,
yeah.
Go find me some gold, stupid. This is like what, Cristobal Colon was dealing with. But, like I said, I go straight to primary sources. You look at Bartholomew de las Casas, go look at what, de las Casas said about, after a while, he was like, damn, I think what we're doing, the enslaving of people is so wrong, and he was like a religious missionary type dude. And he was pushing Christianity onto the natives and, chopping people up, all types of savage behavior. But I'm reading primary sources. So if I'm reading primary sources and you're reading Houghton Mifflin and McGraw-Hill, I'm going to go with what I'm reading because I'm reading it straight from the guy that experienced this, and then they try to say like, oh, black people didn't have boats. But when you read the De las Casas letter from Cristobal Colon, it says, when we got there, they have a whole bunch of boats, the size of an 18-oared galley. I'm like, that's a pretty goddamn big boat.
Yeah.
So, these people are traveling, back and forth. To the islands is what he's saying, like throughout the islands. And then I try to always relate it to common times. And I'm like, well, we got refugees who leave Cuba, come to Florida. We got people who leave Africa and come to America. So if people are doing it now, just to escape, imagine what people who didn't have oppression had time to sit there and build a nice little boat, what they did. They probably waited for the perfect weather and perfect conditions. And then I started digging into that and come to find out that if you leave off the coast of Africa, you don't even need a sail. There's certain currents that'll bring you right to the Americas. Yeah. So I look up the currents. I'm like, oh, that's actually, factually correct because that's how the currents travel. They travel like this circular motion, North America to Europe and then West Africa to America. It's like, oh, there's some validity here, So again, going back to what we said in the beginning, people are dumb because everybody's too lazy to look up information. But I was always been the type of person where if you said something, I was like going to look it up. If I didn't know something, I'm going to look it up. And I just always I was afraid of not knowing. I hated when somebody said something I didn't know it, that would irritate me. I'm like, I have to know what that person just said, right? Yeah. So I was always like, looking for real information. And that's how I came to a lot of these conclusions, on Joe Rogan podcast. But it just doesn't make sense. Why would you go to Africa, bring people here, when you got people here you can enslave and were enslaving? Go look at Andrew Jackson and what he was doing to the natives. It's like They had a good POW population here already, and plus they were amalgamating the natives into society here as well. There's a lot of things that was happening. But.
Yeah, it's surprising to me how so many people can say, this is what happened 400 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. It's like you have no idea. Like the things that you're basing this on are like loosely, like they're barely facts. It's all theories. And when I read Graham Hancock's book, I'm like thinking that. He produced all sorts of evidence, whether it's concrete or not, it can be up for debate, about, people being in North America like 14,000 years ago. And, they have those mounds out in Ohio and throughout other places in the Midwest. And it's like, I don't understand why people just believe that, civilization started 6,000 years ago in Babylon, like out of nowhere. Advanced civilizations didn't exist until then. I mean, they have what's it called, Lucy, which is like a Australopithecus, whatever early modern human that they can carbon date to like 1.2 or 2.2 million years ago or whatever. And it's like, so what? Man, maybe there was just we found one skeleton from like 1 million years ago, and then what? They didn't really figure this shit out for another 1.9 million years. It's like it's like how can you even, like, it boggles my mind that, like, when you say stuff to people like this, and even when I'm saying now, it's like you go from whatever it was, I don't know the number on Lucy, but say it's 1 million years ago. So you're saying they went 1,994,000 years without anybody getting their shit together? What?
And that's my problem with religion, because you take somebody who's a Christian and they follow the Bible. I think according to the Bible, the earth is only like 6,000 years old or something like that, right? And it's just like, all right, bro. Like, if that's what you want to believe, go ahead. So when people say that to me, I say, well, how long is a year according to the Bible? And they go, what do you mean? How long is a year? Because a year on Jupiter ain't the same as a year on Earth.
Right.
So how long is a year according to the Bible?
Yeah, I don't know shit about the Bible. Is that in the Bible at all? Do you know?
I don't know. This is what they say to me. I don't study the Bible, right? Like, I'm not at that point in my life where I care to study it. I know I'm going to study it one day, but right now it's just not worth my time. But people come to me and they say, according to the Bible, the earth is 6,000 years old. So I ask them, well, how long is a year? And then they can't understand that. They're like, malfunction. And I said, well, go in your Bible and find out how long a year is. Go in your Bible and tell me how long a day is. Right? Because we don't know what they're referring to. Right. Even in Genesis, they say about the God, right? But when you go and look at the exact translation from Hebrew, it's gods, plural, right? So it's like, is there more than one God according to your book or nah? And then people are like, no, there's only one God. Well, your book says there's more than one God. It says your God is of other gods, one of other gods. But again, people don't go back into, translation and so on and so forth. So when it comes to religion, I usually just dismiss those people because you're not going back to original translation and you're not taking into consideration science, right? So then they'll say, oh, that's heretic. All right. If you want to live in the 16th century with your mind, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to choose to live in reality. And reality says people are here for millions of years. When people are here for millions of years, they tend to travel and spread out. And that means there's a strong possibility that people exist on all continents. If you don't want to believe that, that's fine. But don't tell me, don't invade my space and tell me I'm wrong until you've explored the facts.
Yeah. I mean, you made a fair point about like language too. I picked up Spanish, working like landscaping jobs, over the years or whatever. And I've always been super fascinated with the, similarities in different languages. And, when I talk to other people, when they're trying to learn a new language, you got to realize that you're speaking in essence, really more than anything else. Like, words aren't anything but, what we define them as, or what people understand them as. So, I see a lot of people who try to learn other languages are looking for some sort of direct translation, X equals X. And it's really not that. It's whatever the meaning is behind X will equal whatever the other word is for it, you know, on the other side. And that's how I picked up Spanish so quickly, is I learned that I didn't have to figure out how to turn my English language into Spanish or whatever other language. I just had to figure out the essence of how to get the point across. And that's really all it is. So when you talk about translating the Bible from, you know, whatever it was, Hebrew, Aramaic, or whatever other language it was written in the beginning, it's like, I mean, you can't really come to any sort of conclusion because you don't know who the hell, you know, changed one word to one word to one word to one word to one word. And that was the problem I had as a kid too. It was like, I was just like, from a young kid, I was just like, I'm not on board with this at all. And I couldn't get any valid explanation from anybody for why I should be on board. And that was really the thing that I think did it for me, is when I would ask these questions, nobody made a convincing enough argument for me to be like, all right, I'm with you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, my thing was, I was raised Catholic, and I look at all the stained glass windows and there wasn't no black people. So I just, you know, I'd go into our mass, and I thought the stained glass stuff was beautiful. You know, I could stare at it for hours, you know,
Yeah, same.
just, you know, and just like, wow, this is like really cool. But I'd always ask myself, like, where's the black angels? Where's the black people? There's no black people on any of these things. There's no black people anywhere. I'm like, there's something wrong here. And then I was the only black family in an all white church. I'm just like, I just feel really alienated. I don't feel comfortable here. You know, so I just would daydream the whole time. The best part about it was communion, because that means it's almost time to go and it tastes pretty good. And the frankincense, incense, I enjoyed that smell. I even have some I burn occasionally in the house. But other than that, you know, the church was pretty wacky to me. I hated going to my grandma's church, which was a black church, because it was just too long.
Yeah.
And he'd be in there for hours. It was like, yeah, I just want to go home and do something else. This is like really boring.
It's the last thing a little kid wants to do at like 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, is have to get dressed up and then sit down somewhere where you don't want to be sitting.
Oh, yeah, really was not cool at all.
Yeah, I don't know. So I kind of want to, I guess, ask you a couple more questions before you wrap up, if you got the time, man.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I've been, I've had your Dominate Twitter book in my, like, on my list of things to buy for a long time, right?
Okay.
And I have trouble, and I think it goes back to the thing I was telling you about school before, of buying something like an education versus trying to educate myself on something, right? And you know, part of my issue, I think, was that, you know, during the time of this social media boom, you know, back, you know, in, you know, 08, 09, 10, 11, I was really fucking off. You know, I was, you know, partying, doing drugs, doing all sorts of stupid shit. And I wasn't really involved in it from the beginning. And you know, I've gotten to this point now where I'm trying to develop, you know, myself and my business into one brand. And I just want to know if you have any sort of advice or, you know, anything you think that I should be doing, or, you know, stuff to look into that, you know, could help me out.
So a lot of people ask me, have you ever been to college? But they never ask me how much I spent on education.
Right.
I remember I went to apply for a job at this software company called Inbox, and I didn't get the job. It was an iPhone app company. This was after I decided to get into mobile applications, and I wanted to market mobile applications. And I didn't get the job, but I remember the guy asking me a whole bunch of pieces of jargon that was just over my head, right? And one of them was ASO, App Store Optimization. I had no idea what that acronym meant. And what I realized was I had a strong understanding of social media marketing. I had a strong understanding of traditional and experiential marketing and field marketing, but I didn't have a strong understanding of digital marketing. Digital marketing had transformed and I didn't know it. You know, for example, analytics, for example, right? Like, didn't know, like I knew about it, but I didn't know about it, right? And Facebook advertising, all these different things. So I went home and I studied. And one of the things I did was I bought a $2,500 course on digital marketing. And I bought all kinds of things. I bought the iPhone dev packages, and I'd go 75% through a course, or 55% through a course, or 25% through a course. But I bought all types of education. And what I realized was whether I finished it or not didn't matter, because I usually stopped because I was fulfilled. I learned something that I was like, oh, I have to go practice this now. Mm-hmm. I remember one time, so that course, I paid $2,500 for that course, right? And I probably completed 25% of that course. But that course, the lady mentioned one book. And I was like, what'd you say? What book was that? So I went to go and I looked that book up and I bought that book, and that book changed my life. So I paid $2,500 to find out about a $20 book, right? That was the investment. Now that investment completely changed my life. It was a copywriting book written by Gary Halbert called The Boron Letters. It completely changed my life. But I paid $2,500 for a piece of information. Mm-hmm. What I realized about that $2,500 course was that I knew most of the stuff in there, but it was refresher. It was filling in some other things, and I may have skipped through some other parts of the course, but it also had a lot of forms and checklists and different things I could download, a lot of materials I could download. So I enjoyed that. Right. Lists of words and all types of stuff. So, when you say, should you pull the trigger on buying my book? I'm like, yeah. The other day, Ben Settle issued, he promoted a course he's got on something. I think it was email marketing on the Learnistic app. Uh-huh. And it was a sale, and it was for $20. I didn't even blink. I just put my credit card in and bought it. Now, when I opened up the app, it's like hours of content that I'm never going to get through, right? I listened to like 15 minutes. I bought this 2 weeks ago. I listened to 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, I got a refresher on some things and maybe pulled away one thing, right? But what I know is that personally, I hoard information, right? Like on top of my computer here, I got just like books just sitting. So this is my chess book that I use. And yep. Somebody bought me this book, and then, I learned investing, and I got this book on Mal, and, I hoard information, right? So I don't hesitate on buying information. I don't hesitate on things like that. If I see something from an expert that I want to learn, I just press the buy button. It's invaluable. I might get 5 pages in and learn something I didn't know, but that thing I didn't know is going to generate me thousands of dollars of income. Mm. Like literally, you get your money back if you implement the things you learn. I got a box over here. I got a fucking you got a library over there. Bag of books. This is a bag full of books. I hoard information. And that's one of my superpowers, that I don't hesitate on buying information. So when people say, like, my book is priced at $47, right? Yeah, people say, oh, you shouldn't price it so high, right? Yeah. Well, I price it high because you have to be qualified to buy my book. And one of the qualifications is you want to invest in yourself. If you don't believe enough to invest in yourself, you're not qualified to purchase this book. The other reason why it's priced at $47 is because I don't want everyone to have it. Right. If I wanted everyone to have it, I'd sell it for $5. Right. But you know what I found out? When you make information cheap, people don't act on it. They don't actually implement it. But if you make them spend a lot for it, they're like, yo, I got to get my money's worth out of this. I'm going to read this book. And still people to this day, they buy my book and never read it, even though they paid $47 for it. Never read it, never opened it up. And I'm just like, hey, but people don't usually act on information either, even when they get it. But, I don't know. I'm different, man. I hoard information. I got a course I bought 3 years ago, never cracked it open, but it's sitting right in my favorites whenever I need that information. The other thing is it's a tax write-off.
Yeah, it's a business expense. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's business expense.
Education's a tax write-off. I think, depending on what state you live in, there's a certain cap on education. So technically, I'm not even paying for this information. This is free. Yeah. I'm just going to write it off on my taxes. This is education expense. And I keep it right in my QuickBooks. It was education expense. So technically, it doesn't cost me a thing. So when people don't buy information, I'm just like, why not? It's free.
Yeah. I don't know what it was, man. I guess it's just because I've seen so much.
I know what it was.
What do you think it was?
It's my Twitter persona.
Nah, I don't know if I don't think it had anything to do with you in particular. My hesitancy. I think what it was is the fact that I've just seen so much bullshit that's out on the internet. You know what I mean? That people, you know, have put out that I just, you know, and because you know, I bought courses before, and I've like taken other things, and it's been like, man, everything that I've learned, at least as far as production goes, has been, you know, stuff I learned for free, you know, stuff that I found on YouTube from people, or stuff that I've learned from trial and error. But, you know, I'm at this point now that like my technical skills have gotten to the point where they're good, you know, and I'm, you know, I'm not trying to sound cocky or anything, but like I know my way around like most technical things when it comes to like, you know, video and audio and stuff like that. But the problem that I now have is trying to get myself out in front of people, so then I could then use those skills. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, when I say that, it's because a lot of the people, because I joke around a lot on Twitter, people don't know, you know, whether to take me serious or not, right? And that's part of my repulsion marketing. You got to hide your power levels in these days. And you can't let people know how great you are, or how intelligent you are. You got to hide your power levels, because envy and jealousy comes out, and other, you know, trials and tribulations present themselves. But also because I don't want the information to fall into everybody's hands. I kind of want to keep it for a select few who are like, you know, really, really curious. Like, what is in that book, right? So then people buy it and they're like, bro, you changed my life. Like, for example, only one person ever contacted me after reading my book. Only one. In the early stages, right? So I think I published this book in like 2018. And his name is Coach Joe Hart. Now, every month I get an update from Coach Joe Hart. January 12th, 27th, I got this update from Joe Hart. See how much money he made?
Yeah.
All right. So he bought my book in 2018. I'll show you his December 13th. December 13th. This is what he was doing in 2020. The year of the pandemic. 600,000, right? Selling his product. October 27th. He sends me updates. So this guy's going to be a millionaire in less than 3 years. And if you go check his Twitter right now, he'll tell you the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting Hotep Jesus and reading his book. He took me out to lunch twice, and we sat down and I answered his questions. And it completely changed his life. He went from some guy working in somebody's basement, you know, selling coins or whatnot, organizing coins, you know, not struggling to get by, but just getting by, to being like, you know, damn near a millionaire, right? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think he was going to be able to do it. I was like, this guy is just too, I don't know. I didn't think he had the swag to pull off what was in my book. You know, I felt like you need to have a little swag. Man, it seems like he had enough.
Yeah.
To get it going, and he's killing it right now. But he'll tweet and tell you like, yo, the best thing I ever did was, you know, meet Hotep Jesus and read this book and pick my brain. But again, why was he the only one to reach out to me? Before he reached out to me, I'm like, why nobody ever like hit me up and asked me questions to explain anything? He was the only one, and he's on his way to be a millionaire. And this is what happens when you're dealing with somebody who has real experience.
Yep. Yeah, I thought when you started that story that he was going to be the only person who reached out that said it sucked. That's what I thought you were going to say. I was like, that's what
you saw.
Yeah, that's
his
surprising.
Last number he sent me was 700,000.
Yeah.
702,000 as of January 27th. He bought my book. I want to say August of 2018. He started selling January 24th of 2019. That's the exact date. So since 2019 and now, it's like 2 years later.
Yeah, not even
$700,000. Right?
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely gonna rethink that decision.
Hey, I whether you buy it or not, I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care because it sells. I do great on it. Yeah. My people do great. I got the knowledge. But if you get it, it's going to change your life. I got one kid, he said it just completely changed the way he thinks. Matter of fact, I got another kid from my alumni. He used to be OG Hotep. You know, he was down with the Hotep movement early on. His name is Dylan Madden. And if you type in Dylan Madden, he pops up. And this is him with his feet kicked up. Single kid who was fat, down on his luck. Here's like a before. Here's some well, hold on, let me if you pull up, you can see like a picture of him here. He's like fat and disheveled, and now he's getting, you know, trim. But he's another case where he was like, yo, I read the book and it completely changed the way I think. Remember you talking about before, like, Hotep Jesus, what is it that, you know, drives you, da 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 da? Whatever I put in this book is making that switch in people's minds. I don't know what I put in the book because I haven't read it since I wrote it. But something that's in there is people keep saying, yo, it flipped a switch in my mind. What I think it is, it's just showing people how easy it is to be an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, man. And, you know, I really can't say how much I appreciate you even, you know, sitting down with me. I mean, you know, when I, you know, commented on your Twitter, and I've been doing that for like the past couple weeks, you know, just like trying to get a hold of anybody I could. Cause I'm trying to get this podcast, like, you know, at least off the ground, more so from the point, you know, not even from like a financial or status point, is because, but I enjoy it. You know what I mean? I enjoy talking to people and I enjoy learning about how other people think. And to me, that's like, you know, the good part about being a person is being able to meet other people and you know, get to find out what they're about. So, you know, when you responded with your email, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe somebody said yes. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I spent so long at the bottom that I said, when I get on top, I got to help the people. You know, I turn down the big platforms and say yes to the small platforms.
Yeah. I mean, I you know, there's not a lot of people, obviously, who do that. So I just want to say I really appreciate, you know, your time. And
it disgusts me that they don't do that. Yeah. It literally disgusts me that they're like, oh, I'm too good to do that podcast. And it's just like, why? Is it because you're only going to do a podcast when it benefits you with a lot of followers? Like, how selfish of you. You know, it's like, it has to be worth my time. For me, interfacing with somebody is worth my time. If I help somebody, that's worth my time. You know how many podcasts change after having me on? They have Hotep Jesus on, and now they get to go to the next person and say, hey, I'd love to interview you. Our last interview was with Hotep Jesus. And they go, oh, I know him. Okay, fine. If he did it, I'll do it. And now they're on this upward trajectory with their podcast, right? Yeah. So I'm the spark for the small guy. Who's going to be the spark? Who's going to be the Medici family? Right? It's like somebody has to be that.
Yeah.
I can't take on a name Jesus and not do that.
Yeah.
Just can't do that.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I really appreciate it. The you know, the other two people that I kind of got coming down the pipe is this guy Spike Cohen, who was a libertarian vice presidential candidate. In 2020. Yeah, I reached out to him on Facebook, and then the other guy I got hopefully coming on soon. I gotta book it. I don't know. Do you know who Dr. Carl Hart is? He wrote the book about drug use for grown-ups. Pretty interesting guy. He's a Columbia professor, but I mean, this is, you know, really besides the point. But it's just been, you know, it was, you know, I've been looking forward to this for, you know, really since the time that you know, we first started interchanging. So, you know, I really appreciate your time. I'm definitely gonna check out that book, and you know, hopefully, you know, I'll talk to you sometime again in the future.
Oh, most definitely, man. I'm here.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Hotep. You have a good day, and I guess enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon.
I just want to make sure people know where to find me.
Oh yeah, go for it. My bad.
BryanSharpe.co, BryanSharpe.co. I think. Let me see. HotepJesus.com redirects there, so you can do HotepJesus.com too.
All right, yeah, I'll put all that stuff in, you know, in with the podcast. I'm probably gonna upload it tonight, so it should be on, you know, Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and everything like that. All right.
Swell.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks a lot. I really, you know, once again, really appreciate your time, man. You know, good luck.
Yeah, thanks, man.